Hey there, you're watching Roll Advantage. I'm Dakota, your DM. We're going to talk about Barbarians today, so grab your great axe and be ready to rage in this episode of Barbarians. Barbarians are people that come from tribes that live with peril and danger and the wilderness around them. And so you would think that barbarians are much more common in tribes, but they're not. They're almost as skilled as fighters per se, and just as rare. Not every person in a tribe is a barbarian, but barbarians usually do come from tribes. So barbarians are a powerful class. They have the most hit dice and health out of all the classes that you'll find with a D12. They are combatants with melee weapons, and they can use light or medium armor. Let's see, we'll go through the book right here, and I can tell you a little bit more about them. So like I said, they have proficiency with light or medium armor. This would be like your hide and your leather armor, your studded leather armor, breastplates, stuff like that, which uses some of your dexterity bonus, but they can max out with that medium armor. There's a feature later that I'll talk about that goes along with their armor class. Their saving throws, they are strength and constitution based. Strength mostly because they are melee combatants and they're very brawny, not very intelligent usually. That's a bit of a stereotype of barbarians. And constitution is your well-being and overall health. So you're going to be fighting off poisons with that, or diseases. Your endurance is based off that. So if you're marching longer than 8 hours a day, that would be constitution based. Some of your equipment that you actually start off with include a greataxe or two martial weapons of your choice. So a long sword or a short sword, a pike, maybe a halberd, something like that. They also have hand axes that they start off with, or a simple weapon, so a mace. That would be a good choice for you if you wanted that simple weapon. They also have an explorer's pack and 4 javelins that they start off with, so they can use a thrown weapon, and that thrown weapon can be based off of strength, if I remember correctly. Rage. So, like I said, rage is that key feature that all barbarians have, and they start off at level 1 with that. While you're raging, you have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. So if you're pushing someone or if they're trying to push you and you hold your ground, that would be great. You also have extra damage when you deal a melee attack. This bonus starts off at +2 and will increase when you get higher into your levels. You also have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from all non-magical weapons. This means that you take half damage while you're in this fury of battle that you come into. With this rage, though, there are some drawbacks. So you can only do it a certain amount of times per day, and that is equal to 2 at first level. And you can maintain this rage as long as you attack or you have been attacked, and you haven't skipped a turn. So even if you do miss with your weapon attack, or if you haven't been hit, that is okay. You can maintain your rage, and that will last 1 minute or equivalent to 10 rounds. Also at level 1 is unarmored defense, and so most classes, they will base their armor class off of one specific trait, such as dexterity most of the time, and then also wear armor. Barbarians have the ability to not wear any armor and then increase their armor class by their dexterity bonus and their constitution bonus. So the 3 main stats that barbarians really focus on are strength, dexterity, and constitution. With those ability scores, you are physically fit, and it's very hard to hit you. Intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, for the most part, are not necessarily needed, although I have seen a few barbarians with a high charisma score for that intimidation bonus. I also like to point out that while you're not wearing any armor with that unarmored defense, you can still use a shield and get that +2 armor class. At level 2, they get a reckless attack, which lets them drop all concern for any incoming damage just to attack with advantage. So they become more reckless, and they have a better chance to catch their enemy off guard. And what this lets you do in-game is roll with advantage on your attack roll. Then, the next time that someone tries to attack you for the next turn, they have advantage to attack you also. Also at level 2, you get danger sense. And what this lets you do is, if you sense that there's a trap that you can see around you that you would take damage from, you do have advantage on the dexterity saving throw for that. So if it's a dragon's fire breath that's coming after you, or say maybe a needle trap that's going to shoot some needles at you or maybe some darts, you would have advantage on the dexterity saving throw for that. At level 3, you have a primal path, and this will include a few different choices that you can go for a barbarian to define them more as your character grows. This includes the path of the totem and the path of the berserker, and I'll tell more about that later on as we go along in this video. At level 4, you have an ability score increase, and also at level 8, 12, 16, and 19. And instead of taking that ability score increase, you can also take a feat if your DM allows it. At level 5, you have the extra attack feature. So whenever you take the attack action, you can actually attack twice instead of once. Also at level 5, you have fast movement. So your speed actually increases by 10 feet per turn. So whenever you take the movement action, you can move an additional 10 feet or equivalent of 2 squares. At level 7, there is Feral Instinct, and so you have advantage on initiative rolls. And so what that lets you do is, whenever you start combat, you can add your dexterity bonus to your d20 roll, and that will tell your turn whenever you act. But when you have advantage, you have a higher chance of performing faster than the enemies that are coming after you. Also, if you are surprised on a first turn from an attack or an ambush, you can actually act normally on your first turn as long as you enter a rage before anything else. At level 9, you have Brutal Critical. So what that lets you do is whenever you deal damage, you get to deal 1 extra die of damage to that attack, as long as it is a critical attack. So if you roll a natural 20, that means a 20 with no bonuses or anything like that, and you would deal critical damage from that, you can add an additional die. So if you're dealing with a greataxe, which I believe is 1d12, that critical would normally turn into a 2d12. But because you have Brutal Critical, you add an additional die to that, so that becomes 3d12 on a critical hit. At level 13 and 17 for Brutal Critical, you add an additional die each time. So at 13, you add 2 dice instead of 1, and at 17, you add 3 dice instead of 2. Starting at level 11, you get Relentless Rage. And what this does is when you drop to 0 HP from an attack while you are raging, you can actually do a DC Constitution saving throw of 10, and if you do succeed, you drop to 1 HP instead. So if you would normally start dying, you can do this Constitution saving throw, and since you are proficient in it, you get that proficiency bonus to it, and this lets you go to the battle a little bit longer and last. Now when you do use this feature, and you've done it more than once per long rest, the DC increases by 5. At level 15, you get Persistent Rage, and what that lets you do is when you are raging, the only thing that can stop that rage is if you fall unconscious or you try to take an action to end that. So you no longer have to keep on attacking or keep on being hit while you're raging to maintain your rage for that minute. At level 18, you have Indomitable Might. So if your total of a strength check is lower than your strength score, you can use your score instead of that for the total. So say you've got a strength score of 18, which would be a modifier of 4, and I roll a 10 for a strength check. Well, I would get 14 on an athletics check normally then, but since that 14 is lower than my strength ability score, I can just take an 18 instead. Lastly, at level 20, you have Primal Champion, and what this lets you do is it increases your strength and constitution scores by 4. The maximum of these scores is now 24, when normally all the other classes would have a limit of 20 for all of their scores. Next we're going to talk about the primal paths for the Barbarian. One of the Barbarian paths is the Path of the Berserker. So at level 3, you get Frenzy, and while you are raging, you do go into a Frenzy. While you are raging, you can then make an attack action as a bonus action. And if you do this, then you actually do suffer 1 level of exhaustion at the end of your rage. But this lets you get in more hits while you're raging, so you're dealing more damage. At level 6, you've got Mindless Rage. And what this lets you do is you cannot be charmed or frightened while you are raging, but if you are raging and you have already been charmed or frightened, the effect is actually suspended for the duration of your rage, which is about 1 minute. At level 10, you have Intimidating Presence. You can use your action to frighten someone with your menacing presence while you are near them, which is about 30 feet. If the creature can hear you or see you, they must do a DC saving throw of 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier, and it has to be a wisdom saving throw. If they fail it, then they are frightened by you until the end of your next turn. Lastly, for the Berserker Barbarian, you have Retaliation. This is at level 14, and so when you take damage from a creature that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to actually make a melee weapon attack against that creature. Next is the Path of the Totem Warrior, and what this does, it lets you select beasts as a totem, and you would actually take on those attributes of that creature. So there's the wolf, the eagle, and the bear. So starting at level 3, you get the Totem Spirit if you choose this path. And what this does is you actually acquire some kind of physical totem object, so say a wooden carving or something like that, and it takes on either one of these paths or these creatures that you take on the resemblance of. So, for example, if you choose the bear while you are raging, you have resistance to all damage except for psychic damage. It makes you tough enough to stand any punishment. If you choose the eagle instead at level 3, while you are raging and you're not wearing heavy armor, which makes sense because as a barbarian you are not proficient with heavy armor, other creatures have disadvantage on opportunity attack rolls against you, and you can use the dash action as a bonus action on your turn. So they have a hard time hitting you while you're moving through the battlefield. Lastly, at level 3, you can choose the wolf, and while you're raging, your friends have advantage on melee attack rolls against any creature within 5 feet of you. So this is really good for trying to get a bunch of smaller creatures together so that way you can wipe them all out with your party. At level 6, you've got the aspect of the beast. And so you get to choose another animal, and it doesn't have to be the same one as your level 3 path, as your level 3 totem. So for the bear, you can actually carry twice as much as weight as before, including having push, pull, lift, or breaking objects that rely on strength checks. Those now have advantage. For the eagle, you have the eyesight of the eagle with their fine eyes. You can see up to 1 mile away with no difficulty, and you're able to find even the smallest details easy to look at when it's about 100 feet away from you. Also, you don't have disadvantage on perception checks when there's low light. Lastly, for level 6, you can choose the wolf, and you actually can track other creatures while traveling at a fast pace, and you can move stealthily while traveling at a normal pace. Level 10, you have Spirit Walker. So while you are level 10, you can cast the Commune with Nature spell, but only as a ritual, which means that you have to take 10 minutes to actually cast this. When you do this, though, a special version of one of the animals you already chose from the previous levels at level 3 or 6 come to you, and they tell you the information that you're looking for. At level 14, you have Totemic Attunement, and so if you choose the bear for this, while you are raging, any hostile creatures have disadvantage to attack any creature except for you. If you choose the eagle, while you are raging, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed, which should be, at this point, about 40 feet, because you do have that fast movement feature at level 5. If you are doing this, you can only do it in short bursts. So if you end your turn in the air, you'll actually fall down to the ground. And so for every 10 feet that you fall, you take 1d6 damage. The wolf, while you are raging, you can use a bonus action on your turn to knock down a creature that is large sized or smaller, and you can knock them prone when you hit them with a melee attack. In my next Barbarian video, I'm going to do an interview with one of my close friends and fellow players that has actually played a Barbarian based off of the Viking aspect. That's what he's trying to build it off of. His name is Maza, and we will also talk about the Unearthed Arcana versions of the Barbarian. So I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.